All right, Brian, flipping gears a little bit here, talking about Notre Dame's junior day. They just had a lot of high octane caliber recruits on campus on Saturday for their junior day. And from a lot of the intel pieces that were on the premium message boards, it sounds like a lot of those visits went really, really well, which is exciting to talk about. So, getting through it, man. I mean, I know that you put out that intel piece, but kind of walk us through just how the weekend went.
Well, it was interesting, Trevor. I was curious how the weekend was going to go with the weather being what it was. That was obviously a big part of it. Looking at it from the standpoint of um, uh, how would some of the travel, and there were a lot of guys that didn't make it in. Totally coincidental. A lot of the defensive backs didn't make it in. Just totally coincidental there. But Zach Fort didn't make it in, and Jordan Deck didn't make it in. Kasani Giles didn't make it in. A lot of them had some. A lot of it was scheduling issues that they had to kind of work through. But obviously that was something that I was curious about, and how many guys would make it in. One of the offensive linemen, Ogboko, didn't make it in, which is obviously a little disappointing because he's a big time player, but they still had some guys on campus. And so I was very curious to see kind of how the whole operation would go. And it went incredibly well. And obviously one of the big reasons why is the offensive or the coaching staff had to step up because they didn't have the, some of the things around them that maybe they would have had before Chad left. And so they did. From everything I've heard, they stepped up and obviously did a great job getting everything going. And obviously the recruiting staff did a great job as well. So Trev, when I look at it, first and foremost, obviously a lot of this would have been on the message board. We put a lot of this intel pieces on the board yesterday, so you'd have already known some of this stuff. But just kind of looking at it, the big thing that was important this weekend is you had 3 very important receiver prospects on campus. And then you also had one of your top remaining offensive line prospects on campus. And that was a really important one because finishing off this offensive line class is going to be important. Finishing off this this receiver class is going to be very important. And then, of course, they also had a very important defensive tackle on campus this weekend, and we'll get into as well. But just overall, Trevor, it was a big weekend. It was a very impactful weekend, and Notre Dame made a big move. One of the questions I had coming into the weekend was how impactful would the season have been? And from what I'm told, it had a major impact. And there's a lot of kids that liked Notre Dame that all of a sudden love Notre Dame now. Guys that had some interest in Notre Dame that all of a sudden love Notre Dame now. And I thought that was impactful. But, Trev, let's just kind of start off. What you want us to go receivers, O-line, running back, and then we'll dive into defense. Is that direction you want to go with this?
Let's do it, man.
All right. So, first of all, there's 4 receivers on campus this weekend. We haven't got an update on the 4th one. That's Devin Fitzgerald, who's the son of Larry Fitzgerald. So we won't talk about him because we haven't gotten an update on him yet. But 3 guys that were on campus this weekend that were very important and very impactful. And again, not that Devin Fitzgerald wasn't. We just don't have an update on him. So that's why we won't talk about him. But you had Connor Salmon, who has been a big-time target for Notre Dame for quite some time, receiver from Virginia. You had Braden Robinson on campus this weekend, who's a burner from the state of Texas. He's run as low as 10.3. I think his personal best 100-meter dash is a 10.34. And he's a big-time playmaker. And then you had Caden Finley, who was on campus as well. He's a top 100 recruit out of the state of Texas. 2 kids from the state of Texas. A lot of Texas kids on campus this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is intentional. It's always intentional, but what it shows is, like last year, they tried to recruit Texas. There just weren't a lot of fits down there. And this year, there's a lot of fits down in Texas, and so we're going to talk about that. But looking at these 3 receivers, they needed to make a big splash. And I was very curious, like, how the season went, and all that. How impacted would receivers be? I'm floored at how interested these receivers are in Notre Dame. Floored. And these aren't like low-level guys that, nobody's ever heard of, and you're hoping that Notre Dame can turn them into players, and I don't know if they're any good or not. And these are dudes. I mean, Connor Solomon is a dude who's got offers from, big-time programs, Clemson, Florida State, Notre Dame, obviously. There's some big-time programs after this kid. Braden Robinson is another 4-star top-ranked guy that Notre Dame is after. Kadon Finley's a top 100 recruit nationally. And the only reason Braden Robinson isn't ranked even higher is because he's maybe 5'9". Like, maybe 5'9". But you know what he can do, Trev? He can fly. And then Caden Finley's a top 100 guy. So, like, these are – and you look at you look at Braden Robinson's offer list. You look at, LSU, Miami, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, big-time programs after him. Obviously, Notre Dame as well. Michigan is after him. You look at the same thing, Connor Solomon, Caden Finley, same thing. These are big-time receivers, and I'm thinking, like, okay, are they going to be able to do anything with them? And the big takeaway from this weekend is they absolutely blew it out of the park. Notre Dame is very much selling, we did this because this is what fit our personnel. This is what we're going to do. How do you know that we're going to do that? Look at the kids on our roster. There's no Riley Leonard on our roster next year. There's CJ Carr. There's Kenny Minchie. There is Steve Angeli. There's Blake Hebert. We've got a commitment from Noah Grubbs. These are throwers. That has been huge selling point. And then, of course, when Mike Denbrock's most recent pupil is playing in the NFC Championship game as a rookie in Jaden Daniels, that's been impactful as well. So the staff has done a great job of it. The feedback we got on the job Mike Brown did this weekend was excellent. He's put them in great position with these guys, really selling his vision for where they want to take the offense. And the other thing Mike Brown has done a good job of is looking at how well the receivers played down the stretch when provided opportunities. I mean, they made some big plays against Indiana. We saw them step up and make big plays. Obviously, Jaden Greathouse went off in the semifinal game against Penn State in the championship game. You had guys making more and more plays. So, that's been something that they're selling. But his thing has been, look at the growth we made throughout the season in year one. We had some, we had to have this kind of guy, but, we want to be we want to be a development program. We don't want to be a portal receiver program every year. We did that last year. We're going to do that again in 2025 because we need to. That's why we got Malachi Fields and Will Pauling. But the goal is to recruit and develop high school players. That's the message that Mike Brown has given. And so far, he's knocking it out of the park with these receivers. I mean, I would say that Mike Brown's probably the biggest reason that Connor Solomon is looking at Notre Dame. Like, that relationship has been really strong. He's really growing a strong relationship with the two Texas kids that visited this weekend. So the message between like Denbrock and him has been huge. So specifically getting down to the weekend, Trev, with Connor Solomon, it was it's interesting. They did it differently with each kid. So like with Connor Solomon, he's been on campus so many times that it was about getting him around the commits. It was about getting him around Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman more than Mike Brown because he's already got that great relationship with Mike Brown. I was told that a lot of the commits hung around him like all weekend. Like, hey, because he's getting closer and closer to making a decision, and Notre Dame is near the top of the list. But it was kind of like you're in closing mode now with Connor Salmon, and where the other guys, it's like you're still building. So I thought that went great. I mean, the feedback we got on the visit was it knocked it out of the park. Just, I don't know if I'd say that Notre Dame is definitely the number one team. Like, nobody else is close. I think Notre Dame and Penn State have started to separate themselves from everybody else. I think that's where we're at. And I think that's because Penn State's done a great job recruiting the state of Virginia for years. I mean, guys that I played against went to Penn State. I played against James Boyd. He went to Penn State. I remember recruiting that area. Chris Bell was a wide receiver that went to Penn State. He was after me. DJ Dozier went to the same high school I went to way before I did. He went to Penn State. They've done a great job. I mean, Penn State has for decades has been a major player in Virginia, and they should be considered a major player here. But my understanding is Notre Dame and Penn State are the two teams that have kind of separated themselves from the pack with Connor Salmon. Now it's about closing on him. That's a big one. We'll break down the film in a little bit, Trev, because he's a dude. Braden Robinson, this was his his first visit to campus. So this was a big one, and he came with his parents. His dad is his high school football coach. Now, here's the interesting thing about Braden Robinson. Dynamic athlete, 10-300 guy. The film, as you guys are going to see, is really impressive. He's a burner, but he's also a really high academic kid. Like, this is a big part of his decision. Doesn't mean that he's going to pick Notre Dame just because of that, but that's where a lot of his interest in Notre Dame came from. So the early interest in Notre Dame was more about the academic piece and less about the football part because of reasons that we've talked. And so now the football piece, he was one of those guys I was told the season had a major impact on him. Like, his interest is more big picture, which you like. But now the football piece is a big part of that. And the message they have for him as a returner, as a receiver, and the uniqueness that he brings, the different ways they'd like to use him, screen game, jet sweeps, vertical stuff, return game. He was really impressed by what Notre Dame's pitch is for how he specifically uniquely fits into the offense. And they hit it out of the park. I mean, absolutely hit it out of the park with him, Trev. So, but coming with his parents was obviously a big part in getting, selling that to him. And then the other player is Caden Finley, and he was on campus this weekend. Now, he has been on campus before, but this is the first time he came with both of his parents. And I think this is the first time his dad has been on campus. His dad is Jermichael Finley, who played tight end at Texas and also played tight end for the Green Bay Packers. As we all know, Notre Dame tends to do very well with players whose dads played in the NFL for a host of reasons. So obviously there's an interest in Caden Finley, but here's an interesting thing. I don't know that the previous recruiting coordinator was as high on Caden Finley as the receivers coach is on Caden Finley. Well, that's not there anymore. And so this was all about Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock's vision for him. And they did a great job with him. Really emphasized, the fit. They see him as a slot and a field guy. They see a lot of Jaden Greathouse in him. And that was kind of their pitch to him. Hey, look at this other Texas star, played at Austin Westlake, came here, played as a freshman. Year 2, he emerges in the playoffs as our go-to guy, leading receiver. And then he's going to be great moving forward. And so that was obviously a big selling point, and they kind of built similarly. They play similarly, and I think that was a big push. So what was interesting is they really turned the heat up on him this weekend compared to where it's been, because I think there's different decision makers being made. First visit, obviously there's a lot of work to be done with him, but Notre Dame shot way up his list based on what happened this weekend. So that's how the receivers went. Somebody in the chat just said, I saw Dylan McCullough talking with a kid in his family at Embassy Suites on Friday. What running backs recruits were on campus this weekend? There was one that matters more than anybody else, and that's Jonas Walton, running back from Georgia. You could make a case that he might be their top guy on their board. There's a couple guys that I know Coach McCullough, that I think Coach McCullough really likes, but I think he's at the top of the board. Big time player from the state of Georgia. This is his first campus. This is his first visit to campus. He likes Dylan McCullough a lot. He likes what the running backs have done a lot, but obviously getting to know Notre Dame, that's a different animal, especially coming from the South in the middle of winter. They did a great job on that one. So they're going to be a major player for Jonas Walton moving forward. He's very much a Notre Dame kid. But as we know, Trevor, convincing a Southern kid how much of a Notre Dame kid he is can be challenging.
Sure.
And that's what this weekend was about with Coach McCullough, with Coach Freeman, with Coach Denbrock. It was, dude, you are exactly what we want at running back at Notre Dame. As a player, as a young man, as a student, you fit what we're trying to do. and they did a tremendous job. Again, long way to go. He's going to take official visits. I don't expect any movement there as far as making a decision. Anything can happen in recruiting, but in that one, he's like, just like Connor Salmon, he has a process that they have set out for themselves, and they're probably going to stick to that, much like Jadon Blair did last year. And so I think that was a big one too. He is a really talented player, and we'll break down his film at some point in time as well, moving forward. But they needed to kind of make a strong impression now that he's on campus, and they absolutely made a strong impression there, Trev. Last on the offensive side of the ball, offensive line. Obviously, you had your 2 commits on campus, and then you had 2 other offensive linemen on campus this weekend that were sort of top of the list guys. Number 1 is obviously Tyler Merrill, who's from Pennsylvania, has been a must-get recruit for Notre Dame for quite some time. Massive kid, top 100 recruit, like 6'5", 320. I mean, just a really impactful player. Bulldozer of an offensive lineman, Trevor. Bulldozer. Notre Dame, Penn State, I think trying to think, who is this top 5? It's Notre Dame, Penn State, Alabama, Clemson are schools that that were in his top list. I always felt like Notre Dame and Penn State were probably his top 2. I love where Notre Dame is at with him now. And with this visit, obviously there's some things, some closing that needs to be done, but this was a huge impactful weekend for them with Tyler Merrill. Getting him around the other 2 commits, that was a big thing. How you fit into the offense, how we see you, all those type of things were there. And then they also extended an offer, Trevor, to Evan Goodwin, who plays at Pulaski County in Arkansas. Big 6'7" kid, over 300 pounds, pure tackle, quality prospect. They offered him this weekend. Things went very well. Very early stages. So I don't know that there's a push to get him to commit anytime soon. I don't think he's in a hurry to commit. But Notre Dame immediately obviously jumped into his top group. He's been on campus before. He was at camp this summer. So there's clearly interest in this kid. This is the 2nd trip he's made to campus, I believe, maybe 3rd, without an offer. And that kind of says all you need to know about his interest in Notre Dame. And then, of course, the offer came this weekend. So that was obviously a big one there as well. So, I mean, I don't know if it could have gone any better, honestly, this weekend, Trevor, with the offensive recruiting. I mean, it's literally like, dude, did they really knock it out of the park with each guy? Or are you just being that's the feedback we're getting from both our sources and then also with the guys talking to the players. I mean, just needle moving weekend when it came to offensive recruiting, especially receiver and running back. Because like offensive line, it's like, okay, you're already in a great place with Tyler Merrill. Just keep building that relationship. You know, you've obviously got a good early connection with Evan Goodwin. Just, keep building that relationship. With these other guys, it's like these visits were going to tell you whether you had a shot to get Jonas Walton. It was going to tell you if you had a shot to get Braden Robinson, if you had a shot to get Caden Finley. Like if you didn't knock this out of the park, you were going to be behind all those other schools and you were not going to be able to make up ground. They needed to knock it out of the park, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park with offensive recruiting.
I know we're going to break down film here in a second, and that's kind of where I began with my evaluation of these guys, right? And it gives you a lot of hope, right? Because these are high school tapes. Like you go and you think of a guy like a Braden Robinson, like that's like some of the high school highlight films that you see kids going down south into the SEC, right? I mean, again, he's from Texas, and so it makes sense. But there's a lot of
he's the guy we look at and say, why can't Notre Dame get guys
right?
Like that?
Literally. I mean, I was going through and I was watching his and Caden Finley's and Connor Salmon's, and I was looking at these guys, and it's just like, see, these are guys that historically make their trip down to the SEC, or they follow Brian Hartline and they go back up to Ohio State, right? Because the Ohio State Texas recruiting pipeline is really, really strong. But you go through and you look at what their film is and I can even see it, right? Like their fits and what the offense is and what Mike Denbrock wants to do with this offense. And so it just gives you a lot of hope, right? Because Notre Dame recruiting film in the past of some guys, especially at receiver, has been like, okay, quality dude. I see the upside. There's not a whole lot of run after the catch with some guys. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, no disrespect to past Notre Dame receivers that have came through.
Because you need guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But when that is the bulk, if not all of what your recruiting class is at wide receiver, you start to see different playmakers come in at the high school level. I mean, the stuff and I know we're going to dive into the film here in a little bit, But the stuff that Braden Robinson's able to do with the football in his hands is just absolutely insane.
Right. Right.
You know,
Building a receiving core, Trevor, is about putting different types of players together.
mm-hmm.
And you can't have all Braden Robinsons.
Sure.
You can't have all Jaden Greathouses. You can't have all Jordan Faisons. You can't have all Malachi Fieldses. You need different types of receivers, in my opinion. And honestly, the thing I like about the 3 kids they had on campus this weekend is they could literally all play together on the field. And then, of course, you have Dylan Faison already in the class.
Right.
And so that's one thing I really like about this group is that you're getting guys with how Caden Finley plays the game is very different from Braden Robinson, and how Braden Robinson and Caden Finley play the game is very different from how Connor plays the game. And those are things that I think are very important.
Yeah,
when you're breaking down this film.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we talked about it after the 2023 season, right? Is that it's so tough when you have a receiving core that's built of like all guys that essentially can kind of do the same thing. You know, diversity in the receiving room is huge, and that's something that they didn't have in 23. You started to see a little bit of it in 2024, right? They used Jordan Faison differently than what they used Jaden Greathouse. They used both of those guys different than what they would use Bo Collins. So now it's just about elevating those positions, right? And you go through and you go and look at the transfer portal. They added Malachi Fields, and you know I love Bo Collins and what he did at Notre Dame, but you look at Malachi Fields and you get an upgrade in the boundary position, right? But you still maintain the pieces like a Jaden Greathouse. And so all that stuff's exciting to see. And now that it's those voids are now starting to be filled through high school recruiting and that pipeline, not just the transfer portal, leaves a lot of room for excitement. And it's something that I'm looking forward to and seeing those guys in a Notre Dame uniform. That is absolutely for sure. Switching gears now, Bryan, because there's a good amount of really highly touted defensive recruits as well that were on campus on Saturday. When you go through and you look at some of them, how did their visits go? What were some of the takeaways, big needle movers, things like that?
Yeah, so the defense was a little bit different, Trev, because you had some guys on campus that are kind of either newer prospects or some guys that maybe there was uncertainty where you stood. And it was a smaller group of guys. There was a couple guys that they're still getting in the process of knowing, like Joey Quinn, who's a kid from Chicago that I like on film. But it's kind of like, okay, we're still in the evaluation process. Let's get to know each other. It's a little bit of a different type of visit. The Dixon kid who's on campus is similar. So you're not, haven't made offers yet, still kind of evaluating, but really want to get to know them as young men, size them up, that type of thing. And there was one kid on campus, especially that I think the staff loved his film, but wanted to get him on campus and size him up first before an offer went out. Because, and when you see film of him, you'll understand why. But the kid that they brought in was a young man by name Ebenezer Iwatiti. I think is how you say that. He's from South Garner, North Carolina. Trevor, when I watch the film, I'm literally, and I don't like doing this all the time, but sometimes like comps need to be when they just come to you. Like that's when I like using comps. And I'm watching this kid play on film and I'm like, Julian Akwara. I mean, just on repeat. It's on loop in my head. This is Julian Akwara. 6'4". I was told he actually measured in at Notre Dame at 221, which means he's continuing to bulk up. He was like a $180 not that long ago. I mean, you see some pictures of him as like a freshman and sophomore, and he is skinny, just like Julian was, but he's super long. He's like that kind of kid that can kind of scratch his knee without bending over. You know what I mean? He's got that kind of crazy length, super twitchy off the edge. I don't care what his recruiting ranking is, because he's not a kid that's ranked really all that high, Trevor. I mean, I don't know that anybody has him in like the top 250.
No.
I think Rivals has him as a they have him as a 4-star, but he's not ranked by them. I think On 3 has him, or I think 247 has him as a 3-star, I believe. But yeah, they have the number 27 player in North Carolina. But then you look at his offer list and you're like, yeah, something doesn't look right here. Notre Dame, Florida State, Georgia, Alabama, Miami, Ohio State, right? Okay, that's an impressive offer list for a 3-star. Very impressive offer list. And the film supports the offer list, not the ranking, not the recruiting ranking. This is his ranking and his offer list. Well, depending on where he commits to, his ranking will probably skyrocket. His offer list is going to keep getting better. This is a kid that's super raw, needs to be developed physically, but there's some big time explosiveness there. He came on campus this weekend with no offer. which I think says a lot. Now, he probably knew that an offer might be coming, but he got offered on campus. And essentially, from what I have gathered, it was as soon as they sized him up and saw that all the measurements they had were legit, offer. I mean, it came quick. He's that kind of elite, twitchy edge rusher that we say Notre Dame doesn't get enough of, although they've got Boubacar and Logan Thomas. He's like that kind of guy. He's that, which they didn't. What's the one thing I complained about the D-line class last year? There was just not that twitchy edge rusher, that viper guy that can just get after the quarterback. They didn't have that, and that's why we wanted Marco Jones. He is that. He'll need some time, but man, he is a dude. I mean, he is an absolute dude from a talent standpoint. And I think Notre Dame did a tremendous job on him. And they've been doing a great job coming in. I've been told that Al Washington has really knocked it out of the park with him. Really good relationship there. Now it's about taking it to the next level. There's going to be some big-time schools coming after him, especially now that Notre Dame is offered. You're going to see even more schools start getting involved with him. But they put themselves with the offer and the visit this weekend and just the vision for how they see him. They put themselves in a great position with him moving forward. Now it's about take that next step, close on him. A lot of work to be done with him, but this was a big visit for him. The follow-up's got to be key. That's going to be the key. Build on the momentum you built this weekend because, again, some of you that care about recruiting rankings and all that, I understand it. You're probably not going to be impressed, but just trust me on this one. This is one that they're missing on. This kid has big time talent. Trevor, the whole time I'm saying that, I just see you shaking your head like, yep, you saw the film. He's one of those 5 clippers. They used to call him back. The old school coaches would call him like, what'd they call it? Like, they'd call it like inches or 3 feet guys because it's 3 feet of film. He's one of those kids that you watch 5 clips of and you're just like, all right, this is a guy we want. And you don't need to see a whole lot to see that, just that burst off the edge, that length, and you're like, this guy's got a little something special. This guy's got a little something special to it.
Yeah, I went through and I watched the film of everybody that you put on that intel piece, right? And he was one of the guys that jumped off the page at me too. Extremely long. He's very twitchy. And like he is a raw kid, but like you look at the things that he needs to improve on, and it's all things that are like fixable. Right? Like it's not, he's just not long enough to play Viper at Notre Dame. Like obviously that's the first thing that you see. He has a nose for the football. There was one play on his highlight film where he stripped the running back and he made contact with him on like the opposite side of his ball carrying hand. And it wasn't like he adjusted himself and moved around. He wrapped him up and then just his arms are long enough that he just came back down over after making contact with him and forced the football out. Now I will say like some of it, it's just his raw ability as a rush end, right? Like he tackles a little high. That's a fixable fundamental thing, right? But some of that is because he does a really good job of ripping out the football, and so some of it is correcting some of those mistakes. All very fixable things, but the raw foundation that you need and what you look for in a rush or in a Viper, in a defensive end, in a premier edge rusher, he's got twitch, he's got length, he has good size. Sounds like from what his measurements are is he's not done bulking up either. Right, he still has a senior year of high school to go through. Now, like I'm not saying that he's going to go from 221 to 245, but a great foundation for Al Washington and the rest of the coaching staff to work with. So, no, he was a lot of fun to watch on film, man. I mean, he was a guy that I immediately noticed when I was going through film. That's for sure. Sticking along the defensive line, another defensive lineman that came in was Tiki Hala. Am I saying that right?
I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Might be Hola, but I think it's Hala.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. He was also on campus this weekend. And
another Texas kid.
Yep. Another Texas kid, another kid from down south. Good size for being a junior in high school right now. When I looked at his recruiting profile, he's already up to 285. He's like 6'2.5". He's a 4-star kid from down south. So how did Notre Dame do with him on junior day?
So this is an interesting one, Trevor, because he announced a top 5 before the junior day, and Notre Dame was a part of it. It was Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, USC, and I believe SMU are his 5. If you were going to rank those 5, Notre Dame coming into the visit would have been at best 4th, at best. He's a guy that I was talked to before the season started. Different sources that I have before the season, and they're like, this is a guy we want. There's just a long way to go, a lot of work to be done. They were even lower than fourth or fifth on his list then, but they just kept grinding, and stayed on him. And because this is the kind of kid that Notre Dame needs more of. He's not like a 320-pound monster, but he's going to be over 300 pounds. I saw one service had him listed at 270. He's not 270. He's closer to 285, 290. He'll easily be a 300 to 310-pound kid when it's all said and done. Good quickness, powerful, really powerful. And just that kind of that run stuffing playmaker that can also disrupt that they don't have a lot of. And as you've heard me say, Trevor, if you don't get some kid, like if I would have a rule if I was Marcus Freeman, if we don't get one like kid with some sort of Polynesian type of Hawaiian background in the front seven every year, you're fired, right? I almost had to fire everybody last year, but then Madden Ferramo saved them and committed, right? So they got that. But like these kids just, I think, are such great fits for what Notre Dame's all about. They've had easy transitions, and they're the kind of physical, relentless type of player that you just want. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but like, let's be honest, they've had a lot of success with those type of players at Notre Dame, going all the way back to Manti. But this kid fits that. It was now about convincing him that he fits that. They are not his number one now. They're not the leader. They're not the team to beat anymore, but they made a move this weekend. And I'm confident saying I don't think they're 5 anymore. And they have now piqued his interest to the point where I'll be shocked if he doesn't come back for an official visit. Like, they made a move here. Again, still a lot of work to be done, but I don't know if they could have done any better this weekend with him, because it's not realistic. He's not going to come in with the top 5. You're 5 and he commits in the week. That was never the plan. The plan was we got to let him know that none of those other schools can offer what we offer, because not only can we offer the football now, not only can we offer, because you sit that kid down and you're like showing film of how dominant your D tackles have been the last 2 years. You're like, dude, you're bigger than Howard Cross is already. And he was an All-American last year. And he, until his injury, he was a pretty good player this year. Those are things that you look at and you say, you've got a product to sell to him about what we've done with guys like you. And they did a good job of that, but also about, can you fit into the locker room? And that's always a question about some kids have. There's stereotypes about what Notre Dame is all about, the kind of kids that Notre Dame recruits. A lot of schools will negatively recruit against Notre Dame and the type of kid they get. But then you get on campus and you're like, these guys are dogs, man, just like me. And that was impactful for Tiki this weekend. And I think Notre Dame did a tremendous job of they are now because like you could be in a kid's top 5 and you're like, yeah, they're in top 5, but they're not getting that kid. This is a kid that you are now a player for him. Are they number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5? I don't know, but you are a player for him now. And that was the key coming out of this weekend. And now it's going to be about building on it. And, he is one of their top interior targets. Their top edge target they're going to see today, by the way. They're going to see Samote Kotoanga, I think is my best version of saying his name. That dude is a monster at defensive end. They're going to do an in-home visit with him today. By the way, little recruiting nugget for you that put that on the board last night as well. They can do in-home visits now with recruits because of the rising current juniors, because of the way the calendar's changed. That's one of the new rules this year. So Marcus Freeman, Al Washington, and I think Carter Allman, and I believe I think that Max Bulla might be with him. Let me check my notes here real quick. No, it's Max Bulla will not be with him. It'll be Al Washington, Marcus Freeman, and Carter Allman will all be doing an in-home visit with Kotoanga today. And that's a big one, a very big one. Now, they're not the only DNs on the board. There's a lot of other DNs on the board that they like a lot, but he is their top defensive end prospect on the board right now. He's a dude. And so they're going to do an in-home visit with him today. So yeah, he's the kind of guy you close on, and I mean that's a top 100 dude. That's a difference maker. So I like the board right now, especially with Tiki Hola, because I like where they are with edge players, especially after offering Ebenezer this weekend. You know, Rodney Dunham's a kid that, he's an interesting kid because you don't see many defensive end prospects or like big time baseball players. Rodney Dunham is. He's a really good baseball player.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time you saw Notre Dame use baseball to pitch a defensive end? You know, but he's a big time baseball player. He's coming back from injury. He's on the board. There's actually some decent edge players on the board this year, but interior's really where Notre Dame's got to step up their game. And being able to go out and make a move on Tiki was big. Now it's about, can you follow it up? And that was a big one. And then, of course, at linebacker, Trev, they had some kids on campus this weekend. Now, Kenneth Goodwin didn't make it in this weekend, but Jacoby Clapper and Simeon Caldwell did. Jacoby Clapper is a really interesting player. I think Notre Dame's in a great place there. He's a kid from St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati. They've been on him a while. He's made multiple trips to campus. He's an interesting player. He's sort of like a top 200 to 250 caliber player. He's not the typical top 100 guy that Notre Dame often goes after, but I like why they're after him. I'll explain why in a second. Man, this is kicking my butt still, man. Had to pause and cough there real quick for those who aren't listening, who aren't watching. But he's not your typical like elite Madden, Drake Bowen, Jaden Ausberry, Kingston type of guy. He's the kind of kid that's going to need a couple years to develop, get bigger. He's not real big right now. I've seen him listen anywhere between like 195 to 205 pounds. He's kind of more of a will. Maybe could play some rover, you know, kind of a similar role on first and second down to Jalen Sneed. He doesn't have Jalen's twitchiness on third down to rush off the edge, but like the same first and second down role, some rover, some will type of thing. A little undersized like Jalen, taller than Jalen, not necessarily as long as Jalen, but you get what I'm saying? Like first and second down, similar role. Not similar athletes, but just similar role. But he's the kind of kid that you don't need to necessarily keep happy with playing time as a freshman. He's the kind of kid that's going to need some time to develop. He knows it, I think. He's the kind of kid that goes to Iowa, sits for 2 seasons. You don't hear from him. And then all of a sudden, as a redshirt sophomore, he's like, wow, he's a good football player. And then as a redshirt junior, is like an all Big Ten guy. That's how I see Jacoby Clapper. And you need some guys like that sometimes, because if you recruit nothing but 5 stars every year, you can't keep everybody happy.
Right.
And he provides you some depth. I could see him becoming a really good special teams player early on in his career. Like he's the kind of guy Marty Biagi's going to love on special teams. I really like him. Somebody asked me, would you take him? And I said, yeah, I'd take him. Yeah, but he's not a big time player. No, he's not yet. Maybe he will be eventually. But he's smart. He's a good athlete. He's a hitter, despite the fact he's not very big. You know, like he plays a lot bigger than he is. Like, you know what I mean? Like the style of play, the physicality he plays with, he plays a lot bigger than he is. And as he gets older and stronger, he's gonna be a good football player. And then the other kid they had on campus this weekend, Trev, is Simeon Caldwell, who is a really interesting player. Now, Simeon is like a top 100 player. I think On3 has him as a top 50 guy. But the concern I don't say concern, but one of the questions that Notre Dame had for a while with him was, where's he going to play? Because early on in his career, Trev, he was more of a safety. And this year, Bowles, who's a big time program in Jacksonville, moved him down more to sort of like a linebacker-ish hybrid type of role this year. And he's really filled out to where now, like in the past, Trev, he was a safety body and a safety in high school that played more like a linebacker, but you didn't know, could he play linebacker at the next level? Did he have the size? But he's really filled out nicely this past year. But the thing I like is he's still every bit as athletic as he was. He's smooth. He's fluid. He's smart and instinctive. He can run. He plays against big-time competition. Like, you ask yourself, like, could he play linebacker? He answered that question this year, in my opinion. His change of direction I really love. His closing speed is excellent. He's more of like a rover will right now. I think, you know, rover probably would where he'd play day one that's based on where he is now as a high school junior. I imagine by the time he gets to Notre Dame, he's going to be more of a, you know, rover will type of guy. big-time player, loves Notre Dame. The question was, is Notre Dame going to turn up the pressure on him the way they should? And my understanding is they are doing that they're really making a push for him. And so this weekend was big for that. It was about, look, this is a big-time player who's a big-time academic kid from a big-time program. It's got big-time schools after him. How serious are you about him? And Notre Dame made that known to him this weekend. You're a dude. We want you. Marcus Freeman's got a great relationship with him. He's doing a good job of closing there. I think Notre Dame did a great job with him. Now, he's a kid that's been high on Notre Dame. Brian Smith was down at a month or so ago. He was down at a camp where Simeon was at. And Brian, Brian's smart. Brian's a vet like I am. Like, you don't just rush up to a kid and start asking him a question. You hang back, let other people ask him questions. He already answers it. And then when you identify yourself as a Notre Dame guy, you see if he changes his tone or his answers or not. And so Brian doesn't really, he's not a Notre Dame guy. He doesn't cover Notre Dame, but he'll ask about Notre Dame. But he'll hang back and listen to a kid talk and answer questions first. And he said whenever other people were asking him questions, it was always Notre Dame was always the first school out of his mouth. Always. Kid loves Notre Dame. It's about, but can you convince him to come up north and play? And that's going to be the key. And I think they did a great job this weekend of really reminding him of what he can do. And I think the staff felt better seeing him in person, seeing how he's filled out. We're like, yeah, this kid can play linebacker for us. And so they're excited about that. I think he's a dude. I love this kid's film. I think he's smart. I think he's athletic. I think he's long. He's going to have no problem getting to be 225, 230, in my opinion, when it's all said and done. He reminds me a lot of the role Jack Kaiser played, but he's a lot longer, where just surprisingly how quick he is, his closing speed is. It's really smart. Jack can run. Simeon can run. Simeon's a lot longer than Jack is. He's at least an inch or two taller. He's got longer arms, a little bit more natural in coverage than Jack was, flipping his hips. And so I love this kid. I think Notre Dame did a great job of putting themselves in a position to where, if they continue doing what they're doing, I like where they are with Simeon Caldwell.
Simeon's film was really fun to watch too. Like you said it already, but I just wanted to highlight it again, man. His change of direction's awesome. When you combine that with the length that he has and his ability, like the thing that I always get really interested to see is when somebody in high school makes a transition from safety to linebackers, like their ability to like fill in the box. You know what I mean? Because like you have some safeties that fly downhill, and you'll see high school coaches make them into linebackers because like, oh, well, he's a hard hitting safety, so like let's just put him inside. But he fills pretty well. Honestly, he tackles really well. Like you have some guys like that played the safety position that moved down to linebacker in high school, and like they just go for like the big like shoulder hit. He wraps up really well, tackles well in space.
He's so fundamentally sound, Trevor.
I know.
Which you expect really well for a kid from Bowles, but you are correct. He's very sound fundamentally.
Which leaves a lot of room for excitement, especially considering he has to come back to high school for another year, right? So it's going to be really fun to watch him and what he's doing at the linebacker position. It was weird. Like they would line him up. There were a lot of plays on defense where they would line him up like underneath the safety, but behind the linebackers, which I thought was interesting.
It's like a post-Rob alignment.
Right.
It's like Notre Dame will get to that post-snap. Yeah. They just kind of put him there.
they break the huddle, and that's just where he lines up. But it's because he's still good in coverage, right? There were a couple over the middle where he covered it well. His arms were long enough where he didn't have to wrap the waist to do anything crazy. Like it was good, promising film to watch, man. So no, I was really high on Simeon after watching the film as well.